I need to come clean to you and be transparent with you for a minute, so you have to hang with me. There is a certain type of person that really ticks me off, that anger kind of wells up. It's all began when I was young and a child, and it's carried over into adulthood, but this one individual just kind of sends. I don't even know how to control it anymore, but I'm just going to be honest what it is. It's the person, you ever give somebody a gift and they slowly move their hand in and undo the tape one piece at a time? And then they examine the bow like a new creative way was just designed to make the bow? Yeah, you tick me off. I have zero. I don't even understand that. I tried. I thought it would be a sign of maturity, but as it turns out, even in my late 40s, it's now, I just want to shred the box. Just want to get both hands in there. Like, you see eagles rip fish apart. That's what I want. I just pull it out. I want to grab the gift, and it's like a conquered village. And since I can remember, that's where I was. When we would pass the Christmas boxes around or your birthday, and go and you see what's there. There was nothing more infuriating to me as a child than to watch one of the adults get the box and go, "Ooh, it's pretty. It's what's inside," and they would take their hands slowly and remove the tape. And they'd look at it and marvel at the bow. And then they would say those magic words, "I think I should save it." For what? For what? Throw it away. Let's go. And so that's where I am. And so as you can probably guess then, that this time of year, I am getting inside. I am starting to get worked up because it's Christmas time. And I love this. Christmas Eve, I don't sleep well. I start to wake up on and off. There's something inside my body that starts letting me know it's almost time. It's time to go. I used to wake our children up. I was the dad that got up, and I would sit up in bed, and Ash would say, "Lay down." And I'd say, "No, it's time." And she's like, "Don't make me tase you. Lay down." And I would get worked up, and I'd want to open everything and then shush everybody back to lay down because I just couldn't stand the thought that it was time. And it was time to do this. And I would get excited. I'd get worked up. And maybe you remember those feelings. Do you remember those feelings as a child, laying there when you were young, and and they would say, the earlier, I know the trick now, but you would see her, the earlier you go to bed, the earlier Santa comes. And so it was a way to have some freedom at the end of the night. And so my parents would send me to bed about 5 in the afternoon and just go on. And so it was in there. There was foil on the windows. I didn't see out. It was bad. But there was that excitement that would well up because you knew it was time. Do you remember those feelings? Do you remember that anticipation that you can't wait for that time, for that day, for when the sun starts to come up and you flood the room and there's emotions, there's excitement, that maybe you can relate to that? I know that I can. And I get so ready and so excited. Well, Advent literally means the coming. And it really is talking about the hope that is coming. And it's an anticipation. It is an anticipation for what's about to happen. And Advent symbolizes the present situation of the church. You and I are the church. It represents our current reality of where we are living right now. When we look and think about these as the last days, when we look and really begin to think about these as these last moments that we have here on earth. And see, God's people, we wait for the return of Christ, for his eternal kingdom to come forth and be present. Now, see, we're in a similar situation that the Israelites were in the Old Testament, in exile and coming out. And they are waiting, and they are hopeful and prayerful expectation for the coming Messiah. And God was so gracious in leading Israel out of Egypt. And in the same way, he's leading the church during this Advent season. It's this coming celebration of the Christ. See, we continue to look forward in this eager anticipation that we are looking forward to what is about to happen, for what is about to come. Just like when you think back to when you were a child on Christmas Eve, waiting patiently or impatiently with anticipation and excitement for what's about to take place. So we look forward to this and the coming of Christ's kingdom to be present. The 9th century Christmas hymn, O come, Emmanuel, is so powerful. We're going to sing that at the end of this service. We're going to sing this together as we are taking communion together. But it's this powerful hymn that I believe really is the battle cry of Advent for you and I. Listen to these words. It says, O come, Emmanuel, to free your captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appears. And then it says, rejoice, rejoice. Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. And this is the time that's Jesus' birth. At this time that Israel, at this moment in time when Jesus' birth, that they were looking for something. They were looking for a Messiah to get them out of their current situation, their current reality. It's not where they wanted to be. And it was a time of great challenge, and it was a time of great hope, that they were in desperate need for something different to bring change in the world. So if we just kind of pause for a moment and we look back at their view of what the world looked like, a huge percentage of the civilized world was under the rule of one nation, Rome. Rome was in charge. And it grew over a long, slow period of time, basically beginning in Italy, and made its way into the whole Mediterranean basin, taking over all the surrounding areas. And it grew out a lot of different dynamics. I mean, everybody always hears about the Roman army and the emperors and the battles and those things, but there was invasion. There was conquest of where they took over, and they gathered people groups and geographical lands. But it was also through invitation. There were some countries and some villages and some people groups that said, hey, everything is going so well in Rome, we want to be Roman as well. So they volunteered, they invited. The economy was flowing. The military was successful. The system was efficient. Greek was a common language that was being spoken, so communication was fairly easy. Rome had built these vast systems of roads that they had constructed and networked all of their lands. And they were essentially at peace. There were some mild skirmishes, but Rome was in charge. Now, Judea was growing weary. Israel was growing with some great concerns about their local leaders. Tensions were beginning to mount. There was some anger that was popping up, and they believed that they were being mistreated. These were fueled by religious ideologies and expectations. So what happens with the people? These revolts are starting to break out. Bandits were rising up. False messiahs who said they'd been sent by God were bringing in and leading little bands of armies and militia. Military skirmishes. Flat out, all-out wars. And defeat. All this has left Israel feeling hopeless for the coming Messiah. And one of the things just to catch is that I don't understand the timeline, and we didn't get a lot of history on the timeline of when and why God sent Jesus when he sent him, but it was at a perfect time in history. It was exactly the right time in history. It was a moment in time that God said, here we go. It wasn't just a happenstance where he just said, hey, you know, Jesus, we got nothing else going today. Why don't you go to earth? It was, this is the perfect time. Today is the day. In Galatians 4, verses 4 through 5, it says this, but when the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. So the people were living in this time, even though it was the perfect time that Christ is about to make his entry on earth, the people were living in without hope and with no despair. I mean, they just could not figure out what they were going to do. And the Old Testament had over 300 prophecies about the coming Messiah. And I mean, so they would have known these. They would have known that this was coming. And the Messiah, one of the prophecies was the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. In Micah 5:2, it says, but you, O Bethlehem, are only a small village in Judah, yet a ruler of Israel will come from you, whose origins are from the distant past. There was the prophecies that the Messiah will be born of a virgin. Isaiah 7:14 says this, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will call him Emmanuel. One of the prophecies was the Messiah will be born from the line of David. Isaiah 11, verse 1 says, a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord. So even though there were over 300 passages or prophecies about the coming Messiah in the Old Testament that the Jewish nation would have been really familiar with, they referenced this Messiah who was bringing hope, was bringing righteousness and justice. There was little knowledge of when it would actually happen. So they were living in this tough position of they knew about the hope, they knew about the possibility, so there was an expectant state. But what begins to happen with people when we don't see the end in sight, we kind of begin to start grabbing at straws. We begin to start thinking about, well, maybe this is it. We begin to grab at anything, and there were many false messiahs, many false leaders would rise up to the ranks, and they were all killed. I mean, this happens today. Now, it's easy for us, again, we look at it from 2,000 plus years, and we think, how did they believe what they believed at the time? Because, I mean, it's pretty clear that that wasn't the Messiah that was prophesied about. That wasn't where it was really at. And how were they just grabbing on to these straws? I mean, what false hope? I mean, goodness, why would they do that? Well, I mean, if you think about it, I think that happens today, too. You know, just a few weeks ago, I think it was our lottery in the United States ballooned up over $1 billion. And there were people that can't afford a gallon of milk were rushing to the store to buy a lottery ticket because it was hope. What if I win? It could change my whole trajectory. I mean, what if? And we begin to dream. And what happens is when you don't have hope, and you begin to dream, when you see just a hint of it, then it ends that we jump on it, we grab a hold of it, and we ride that horse as long as we can, because that makes us feel at least like we're doing something and we're a part of it. The largest lottery to date happened in January of 2016, and it had a payout of $1.6 billion. The odds of winning were 1 in 303 million. 1 in 303 million. So really, we're not saying you have a shot at all. You don't. It was a fundraiser. And people without hope that were living in despair fueled the pockets of other people. See, Advent isn't about false hope. It's about a real hope. Advent's about living in hope for the coming Messiah. It is a deep-rooted belief that God is working, as God is at work for our good. He's already working. He's never taken the day off. It's not like he's saying, hey, we're going to let you guys run this thing for a little bit, and then I'll step in the end. It is really that God's at work on our behalf, working right now. In Romans chapter 8, verse 24, it says this, "For in this hope we were saved, but hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently." Verse 28 says this, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose." So it's the help we need, it's the deliverance, it's the restoration, but it is hope that's not just waiting, it is patient. It's the love that is patient, it's the hope that is patient. See, in biblical times, peace was a common greeting. Peace to you and peace to your family, peace to your tribe, whatever it may be, that was a common exchange for those traveling along the road, the journeys of life. But peace also meant freedom from war and violence. It was the exit from war and violence. And so when people would talk about peace, that there was the greeting of peace, but there was also peace which said, I'm no longer be at war. I no longer want violence in my life. But they also had a little twist to it. See, when the Jewish nation was talking about peace from Rome, it was freedom from war and violence. But here's where the twist came in. It wasn't just, I want them to go away from us or leave us alone. It was not just let me be, that Rome can be here and Israel can be here. It was not that okay, Rome has been over us and lording themselves over us and basically oppressing us. So if we just part ways, we can part as friends. That's not the peace that Israel was looking for. The peace that they were looking for was, we have so destroyed you, there's nothing left. That absolute peace is that I have destroyed my enemy, and there are no more. That we have separated ourselves, and not in the separation, that I have annihilated you. Now, if you think back, you think, well, that's kind of hard, but I mean, have you ever had a bully? That if you go back and you think about that bully on the playground and you thought, okay, I can go to this swing set, they can go to this swing set, and we all get along. But when you're at your swing set, you're planning their demise. That's where Israel was. I don't want to just part and be friends. I want you exterminated and completely out of my life. So in a weird way, peace became the hope that would bring revenge for justice for the nation. In a weird way, peace became the hope that would bring revenge for justice for the nation. Hope was not in a mighty military. That's where the false messiahs kept rising through the ranks, that we were going to be a mighty military. The disappointment there was in Jesus, who was not a mighty military. Their hope was not in the baby in a manger. It didn't fit our individual desire for peace. Now again, this may seem crazy from 2,000 plus years away, but when we look at it, I wonder how many times in our life this happens. That I want this peace, that we talk about, this hope for peace, that I wonder if Jesus would just do what I want him to do. If he would bring hope in my relationships or in my health or jobs or in income or in my children, then I wonder if that I would be better off if Jesus would just lead the way I want him to. Then my world would be so much better. Now your world is probably going to be jacked up, but mine would be better. Mine would be better because my hope is in the peace that I desire. Not in the peace that Jesus offers us. Our hope is in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 through 7. It says this, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. So the Messiah is going to come and bring these two things, this justice and this righteousness. This justice and righteousness. And justice flows from God's heart and character. It just flows right out of him because it's true and it's good. God seeks to make his object of his holy love whole. So when we look at this, when God looks at us as his unbelievable creation, that he loves us so much, that when he looks onto us, he goes, I'm coming with justice and righteousness, not just because I'm going to clean the slate, but because I'm going to make you whole. I want to make you whole. I want to restore. I want to make this right. I mean, this is what motivates God through the Old and New Testament. It's the way that he handles when people are brought forth with sin and injustice. The judgments he passes based on making it whole. I mean, his judgments in the Old Testament and the New Testament, when they came not only just individually, but they came corporately. The scope was broadened, and justice is only scary for those who have acted in unjust ways. I mean, when we go before a judge and we are innocent, we're not in fear. But it's when we know we're guilty and we deserve punishment, that's when the fear comes in. And this is what it's all about. That justice doesn't mean annihilation or revenge. Justice means making things right. Justice means making things right. Sometimes we're hoping for revenge and destruction. And Jesus says, my justice is making the world right. I mean, we hope for the worst things in our world to be made right. We want to eradicate them. We want to get rid of them. And so when Jesus is coming, he's talking about his justice and his righteousness, then what are we looking at? We're looking at the vulnerable. We're looking at the hurting. We're looking at the hungry, the marginalized. the alienated, the alone. We look at what the damage that sin has caused in our world. So when Jesus says in Isaiah, and through the prophet Isaiah, I'm coming with justice and righteousness, I'm coming with justice and righteousness, then he is stepping into the gap of the things that when people are vulnerable and hurting and are easily taken advantage of, that they're going without water and food. The marginalized, those that are alienated and alone, that Jesus is stamping in that gap and making the world right, making it whole. The removal of sin. Proverbs 29:7 says this, the righteous care about justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern. So this justice comes in, and it is where we say that if we're going to be who we say we are, then we join Christ in standing in that gap, and we take care of those that are vulnerable. We look at those that can't take care of themselves, that are hurting, they're hungry, they're on the outskirts looking in. That loneliness, alienated. We look at these things because if it's important to Jesus, if it's the two things that he says that I'm coming back to do, then we probably got to take it serious as well. Righteousness is about hope, not fear. And Jesus' words about redemption, it's not about condemnation. The coming of Jesus the second time is to be celebrated and not feared. It's good news. It is good news. Redemption is coming. That's why in that hymn in the 9th century, they got it right. And they said, "O Emmanuel, come, O come, rejoice, rejoice." And as the church, we're being called to rejoice, to celebrate, to look. Because you know this already. Our world is messed up. When sin entered in, it threw kinks into what's going on here. We're now dealing with death and disease and destruction. We deal with sin on a daily basis and the people around us. We deal with these things, and our world is messed up. It is hard. It is a struggle. You are challenged. You are pushed. And some of you this morning got up and you thought, I don't know that I can take another piece of this. I don't know that I can handle one more phone call, one more text, one more email. I can't handle one more bill. I cannot handle one more communication. If my mom says this, my dad says this, my sibling says this, if my husband says this, if my child does this, I cannot handle one more thing. And Jesus is saying, I know it's hard, but I came with justice and righteousness to make it right, to make you whole. See, the second coming is not for this about to fix my side to be right or to clear the path just for me. It's not to destroy or destruction of those that disagree with me. Advent is about the coming of Christ to make the hope of redemption for the past and for our future. See, when we long for the return of Christ, we often look and hope for the destruction of those who perpetrated injustice. But maybe we should be looking for the way God wants to bring justice and redemption now, in the sense of making things right to the world. I mean, Jesus is coming as a second Messiah. It's going to happen. It's going to rise up and be a part. See, we remember the first story. We sang songs about it earlier. You've been playing songs on your radio already. Some of you have been playing them since October. That the Christmas songs, these old songs, as they play, they bring joy for us. We're excited about it. We talk about this Advent, getting ready, Christmas Eve, all the parties, the celebrations, the gatherings. Those are all fun, and we do this with excitement. But as we sing these songs, we talk about the past. That first coming that happened, that was really good, but it's coming again. There's the Messiah is coming again. A day that will be filled with justice and righteousness and redemption. And we wait with our heads held high, confident in Christ's mercy and grace. In Luke chapter 21, verse 25, it says this: there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. People will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world. For the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to take place, stand up. Lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. He told them this parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves, and you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with the carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of life, and the day will close on you suddenly like a trap, for it will come on all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be always on watch, and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man. So we wait. We wait with hope, with anticipation. Now, see, when I was a kid growing up in our little rural Oklahoma, I've probably shared this with you before. Once a month on Sunday nights, everybody was in the sanctuary because we had church on Sunday nights. And when you would gather, once there was a gentleman, one of the laymen, who would always teach on the end times. Now, when you're a kid and you start hearing things like four-headed dragons and stuff, that kind of grabs your attention. I mean, and there was no cable back then, so you paid attention. And he would start talking about this, and he had a flannel graph, and he was moving things around, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And I'm going to be honest, it scared me to death. There was no hope of anticipation. You'd start doing the math, and you're trying to figure out, how long do I have, and am I going to make it? And good night, he's coming back, and he's riding this horse. There's a sword, there's flames, and people are dying everywhere. And I mean, when you're 8 and 9 years old, you're dying. Then you start doing the math, because there was a guy that wrote a book, 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming in 1988. And then he wrote the sequel, 89 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming in 1989. I think you can still get copies of it. But I remember doing the math going, all right, Jesus is coming. I'm going to be a sophomore in high school. I don't even get married. Dadgummit. You know, I remember being in fear and listening to that. But this is part of the problem. We were in joy and excitement when we think about the coming of Christmas and the Messiah when he was on to come there. But what are we got to get excited about the next one. And in Scripture it says, lift your heads held high. There he comes. Here he is. There's an excitement with that. There's a celebration with that, because we have to wait with patience and hope and anticipation of what's to come. Because when he comes, it's not to end our life, it's to make our life whole. It's to come in and say in your life, my goodness, what you've endured here. The broken relationships, the hurting, the pain, the disease, the destruction. Some of you have battled more than we can't comprehend it. It is so hard. That second coming is not about ending it. It's about going, whew, it's over. And I'm going to make all things right. Because when I come, I'm bringing justice and righteousness. The pain that you've endured, I got you. The hurt that you have, I'm there. When you felt absolutely alone, we're now here, right here. When you felt marginalized and like no one cared about you, and you felt vulnerable because you didn't have the resources that you thought you would need, I got you. I'm with you. That second coming, we got to start to celebrate. If anybody is going to celebrate at Christmas, it's got to be the church. It's got to be us. In the Advent devotional, God in the Manger, it was written, parts of it was written by a pastor named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was in prison in Antigua prison camp in 1943 by the Nazis. He was found to be helping the resistance of the Jews. And this book was put together after he had passed away by other writers, and they brought it together of a contemplation of his writings. But this is an excerpt of a letter that he wrote to his parents in November of 1943. It says this: "We can and should also celebrate Christmas despite the ruins around us. I think of you now as you sit together with the children with all the Advent decorations, as in early years you did with us." This last line is the one that gets me. We must do all of this even more intensely because we do not know how much longer we have. Now, I'm not saying or comparing your situation to a prison camp, but maybe you feel like it is. And this is a man that was in a prison camp saying to us, here you are. We got to celebrate today because we just don't know how many more we have.